40 years ago today, 6-year-old Adam Walsh was abducted from a shopping mall. His severed head was found 2 weeks later.
Yes, they're quite surprised that someone hasn't come forth yet. They're totally baffled by Adam's disappearance.
On July 1981, the disappearance of Adam Walsh from Hollywood, Florida, sent shockwaves through the nation. After he went missing from a local Sears store, the subsequent investigation was delayed with confusion and missteps, which led to dead ends and frustration for detectives. Despite numerous leads, police struggled to piece together a clear timeline or motive, which left Adam's family in despair. What critical mistakes were made during this investigation, and how was the search for justice stuck? Let's get into the details. Adam Walsh was born in Hollywood, Florida, to Reeve and John Walsh. He was a typical kid who loved baseball, was shy, and brought joy to his parents. But on July 27, 1981, at the age of 6, he became a household name after going missing. On that summer afternoon, Adam and his mother, Reeve, went on a shopping trip to the Hollywood Mall. They entered the mall through the north entrance and headed straight to the Sears store. Reeve had a specific purpose for their visit, and she wanted to inquire about a lamp that was on sale. To keep Adam entertained while she handled her business, she left him at a kiosk displaying Atari 2600 video games, where several other boys were gathered and enjoying the games. After Reeve completed her inquiries in the lamp department around 12:15 p.m., she returned to the kiosk where she had left Adam. To her shock, she discovered that both Adam and the other boys were no longer there. Like any parent losing sight of their child, Reeve felt a wave of fear wash over her. A store manager approached her and explained that a fight had started among the boys over who would get their turn to play the video games. In response to the disturbance, a security guard intervened and instructed the boys that they needed to leave the store. When the guard asked the older boys if their parents were in the store with them, they replied that they were not. This meant that Adam, being younger and quieter, likely did not have an adult with him to support him at that moment. Reeve later thought that Adam, who was a shy child, might have felt too intimidated to speak up when the security guard was asking questions. She believed that the guard probably assumed Adam was part of the group of boys and didn't realize he was alone. As a result, the security guard made Adam exit through the same door the other boys had used to enter the store, which was the west entrance of Sears. Once outside, Adam's parents believed that he had become separated from the group and found himself alone in an unfamiliar area, which added to their growing concern for his safety. As the minutes passed, Reeve searched anxiously for Adam in the toy department, but she could not find him anywhere. With each passing moment, her panic was growing stronger. In a desperate attempt to locate him, she requested the store's employees to announce his name over the loudspeakers. She hoped that if Adam heard his name being called, he would come back to her. While waiting for a response, she didn't stop looking for him, and she moved quickly through the store, called out his name, and looked in every corridor, hoping to find him. By chance, she met her mother-in-law, Jean, there, who immediately offered to help in the search for Adam. Together, they searched through the store and asked employees and other shoppers if they had seen him. However, after more than 90 minutes of looking and repeatedly summoning Adam without any sign of him, Reeve realized that time was running out. In her heart, she felt a deepening fear that something terrible had happened. With a heavy heart and a sense of urgency, she made the difficult decision to call the Hollywood police at 1:55 p.m. Little did she know that her worst nightmare was going to become a reality. This call initiated a large-scale search effort for her son, which included helicopters flying overhead and ground teams searching the area for any clues.
Searched and searched for Adam, and we haven't found a body, so everybody thinks he's alive. We do too. And we feel that since you people have searched so hard, the best thing we can do now is get these flyers in everybody's hands, because the police are so frustrated. Nobody's really come forth.
On August 10th, a gruesome discovery was made in a drainage canal alongside the Florida Turnpike near Vero Beach. Two fishermen spotted something that looked like a baby doll's head floating in the water. But upon closer inspection, they realized it was the detached head of a child. They were horrified, and they immediately contacted the police. Detective Ralphie Latimer Jr. and a deputy from the Indian River County Sheriff's Office arrived at the scene to investigate. Divers from Indian River County and St. Lucie County searched the canal, but unfortunately, no other remains were found. Meanwhile, Adam's parents were still holding on to hope that their son was alive. His heartbroken parents felt completely helpless. At that time, while stolen cars and even horses could be reported to the FBI's National Crime Database, there was no system in place for missing children. This left law enforcement unable to share vital information about missing kids, which made it feel like Adam could be anywhere, and his parents were forced to search for him alone. On the morning of August 11th, Adam's parents later appeared on the Good Morning America television program, where they publicly pleaded for their son's safe return. They expressed their heartbreak and desperation and hoped their message would resonate with viewers. To encourage anyone with information to come forward, they also offered a reward of $100,000 for any leads that could help locate Adam. This outreach was part of their effort to involve the community in the search and highlighted the urgency and seriousness of the situation. As the investigation continued, the medical examination played a crucial role in identifying the recovered remains. The coroner's office conducted a thorough analysis and compared Adam's dental chart to the severed head found in the canal. This comparison revealed a distinctive matching feature, which was a filling on the cheek side of a lower left molar. This unique dental characteristic confirmed that the remains were indeed those of Adam Walsh. Subsequently, the coroner performed an autopsy to determine the cause of death. The examination revealed that Adam had died from asphyxiation, which indicated a lack of oxygen due to obstruction of the airway, and again pointed to a planned and violent act. Furthermore, the state of his remains suggested that Adam had likely died several days before the discovery of his head. The coroner officially ruled Adam's death a homicide, which was a devastating confirmation of the worst fears. The investigation faced a significant challenge as the rest of Adam's body was never recovered, despite extensive searches of the canal and surrounding areas. The discovery of Adam's head, 130 miles far from his home in Hollywood, shocked the country. People were deeply disturbed and saddened by the brutal crime. The severed head was kept in the morgue for nearly 27 years until the case's closure in 2008. John and Reve Walsh were frustrated with how the Hollywood Police Department handled the investigation into their son's disappearance. From the start, they felt the case wasn't treated with the urgency it needed, which led to a disorganized response that left them feeling helpless. In those early days, John took action to raise awareness about Adam. He distributed flyers with Adam's picture, reached out to local media, and held press conferences pleading for information. Their goal was not just to find Adam, but also to push for a more thorough police investigation. They met with law enforcement officials and advocated for a careful examination of all leads. Despite their relentless efforts, they felt increasingly disheartened by the lack of cooperation from the police. This frustration drove John to become an outspoken critic of the investigation, which ultimately led him to advocate for missing children and shape his later work in public policy. John Walsh's role as the host of the television program America's Most Wanted, which premiered in 1988, further improved their message. The show became a powerful platform for raising awareness about missing children and wanted criminals. Each episode featured segments on current missing child cases, which encouraged viewers to be attentive and report any information they might have. The series not only educated the public about the realities of child abduction, but also provided a means for law enforcement to seek help from the community. Otis Elwood Tul, who was a convicted serial killer, lived a life full of chaos, abuse, and violence. Born on March 5, 1947, in Jacksonville, Florida, early years of Tul life were defined by an alcoholic father who abandoned him and an abusive mother who dressed him in girls' clothing and called him Susan. Tul's mother was physically and emotionally abusive, and his maternal grandmother exposed him to satanic practices and rituals. He was sexually abused by multiple relatives and acquaintances, which included his older sister and a next-door neighbor. The intellectual capacity of Tul was classified as mildly disabled, with an IQ of 75. He suffered from epilepsy and experienced frequent grand mal seizures. As a teenager, Tul engaged in prostitution and visited gay bars. In 1961, he claimed to have committed his first murder at 14 after being forcefully asked for sex by a traveling salesman. Tul dropped out of school in the 9th grade and began drifting around the southwestern United States and supported himself financially through prostitution and panhandling. In August 1965, he was arrested for loitering at the age of 17. Following this arrest, Tul's activities between 1966 and 1973 are not well documented, but authorities believe he spent this time drifting across the southwestern United States, supporting himself through prostitution and panhandling. In 1974, Tul became a suspect in the murder of 24-year-old Patricia Webb in Nebraska. Shortly thereafter, he left Nebraska and settled briefly in Boulder, Colorado. However, his stay was short-lived, as he soon became a prime suspect in the homicide of 31-year-old Ellen Holman, who was murdered on October 14, 1974. In the years that followed, Tul's personal life remained a mystery. In early 1975, he returned to Jacksonville after drifting and hitchhiking through the American South. On January 14, 1976, Tul married a woman 25 years his senior, but this union was short-lived. Just 3 days later, his wife left him after discovering his homosexuality. Tul later revealed that his marriage was an attempt to hide his true sexuality. In April 1983, Tul was arrested for an unrelated burning incident. Tul set fire to the home of 65-year-old George Sonnenberg while he was inside. Tul was arrested, he confessed to the crime, and received a 20-year prison sentence for the horrific arson attack. However, during his trial for murdering George Sonnenberg, Tul claimed he didn't light the home on fire and only signed the confession to be extradited back to Jacksonville. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to death, which was later commuted to life in prison. On October 21, 1983, Tul, who was already imprisoned for 2 unrelated murders, had shockingly confessed to the murder of Adam Walsh. However, even without the evidence, Adam's father, John Walsh, was still certain that Tul had committed the crime. Tul reportedly stated that he got Adam to enter his white 1971 Cadillac sedan DeVille, which had a noticeable dent on the right bumper, and convinced him with promises of toys and candy. As they drove north on Interstate 95 towards Jacksonville, Tul described Adam as initially calm and compliant. However, as time passed, Adam began to panic. In a horrifying turn of events, Tul claimed he punched Adam in the face. When this intensified the situation, he stated that he struck Adam again, rendering him unconscious. While Adam was injured, Tul drove further north on the Florida Turnpike to a deserted service road just north of the Raid-Baugh Road overpass in northwest St. Lucie County. Once there, Tul realized that Adam was still alive, so he strangled Adam to death using the seatbelt of his car. Afterward, he allegedly dragged Adam's lifeless body out of the vehicle and beheaded him with a hatchet. Tul later claimed that he disposed of Adam's remains by destroying them in an old refrigerator after returning to Jacksonville. He said he wanted to make Adam his adopted son, but that idea wasn't considered practical. Throughout the investigation, police lost the key evidence, which was the blood-stained carpet from the vehicle, the hatchet which was said to have been used in the murder, and eventually, the car itself was all misplaced. This loss of evidence was a significant setback for the investigation. However, due to insufficient physical evidence, he was never formally charged or convicted of Adam's murder. As initially, Tul had confessed to the crime, but later withdrew it, which left the case covered in uncertainty. This lack of accountability not only left Adam's family without the justice they sought, but also raised serious concerns about the effectiveness of the investigation and the handling of evidence in such critical situations. Several witnesses placed Otis Tul in the Hollywood area in the days leading up to Adam's disappearance, which raised significant questions about his potential involvement. After a long and troubled life, Tul died in prison in September 1996 from cirrhosis at the age of 49, while serving a life sentence for other crimes. Following his death, his niece claimed that he made a deathbed confession to Adam's murder. The television film Adam premiered on October 10, 1983, which depicted the heartbreaking story of the abduction and murder of Adam Walsh. It captured the attention of 38 million viewers during its first airing and raised significant awareness about child abduction. Each broadcast in 1983, 1984, and 1985 featured pictures and descriptions of missing children alongside a hotline for tips. This initiative led to the successful recovery of 13 out of the 55 children highlighted. One notable case was that of American rapper Bizzy Bone, who was reunited with his mother after a babysitter recognized his photo during the broadcast.
27 years we've been asking, who could take a 6-year-old boy and murder him and decapitate him? Who? We needed to know. We needed to know.
Through Adam, the Walsh family turned their tragedy into a powerful advocacy tool and initiated changes in how society should address missing children. Moreover, in 1984, the U.S. Congress passed the Missing Children's Assistance Act, largely thanks to the tireless advocacy of John and Reve Walsh, along with other parents of missing children. This crucial legislation facilitated the establishment of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, NCMEC, an organization dedicated to providing resources, support, and advocacy for missing children and their families. The act aimed to improve the response to child abductions and ensure that law enforcement had the tools and guidance needed to address these heartbreaking cases effectively. In 1997, a renewed effort to investigate Adam's case came from Hollywood Police Chief Rick Stone, who undertook a thorough review following the release of John Walsh's book. At that time, Stone had a long career in law enforcement and had served for 22 years in the Dallas, Texas, and Wichita, Kansas police departments before being appointed as Hollywood's chief of police the previous year. Despite the crime occurring 16 years earlier, Stone accurately analyzed the evidence and even reviewed recorded interrogations of Tul conducted by Hollywood detective Mark Smith. During his review, Stone concluded that there was evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that Tul had murdered Adam. Tul and his partner, Henry Lee Lucas, had confessed to or associated themselves with more than 200 homicides, many of which were later determined to be false. In fact, most of Lucas's confessions were found to have been forced by law enforcement, which cast further doubt on the reliability of any claims made by Tul. In 2007, Jeffrey Dahmer was named a suspect in Adam Walsh's case after his father expressed concerns about his son's pedophilia to the America's Most Wanted hotline.
Killings in Milwaukee. Jeffrey Dahmer, a convicted pedophile, Dahmer lived for a time in Miami Beach, the year Walsh was killed.
Dahmer had lived in Miami Beach at the time of Adam's abduction, just a short distance from Hollywood. Witnesses reported seeing a suspicious young blonde man at the Hollywood Mall on the day Adam disappeared. Both identified Dahmer from photos after his arrest. Additionally, a truck driver recalled seeing a man with a blue van near a canal shortly before Adam's severed head was discovered, but his report was dismissed by police. While Dahmer denied any involvement in Adam's case, John Walsh expressed suspicion about any connection between Dahmer and his son's murder, citing a lack of evidence. Another suspect, Edward James, raised suspicions due to his absence from home for 2 weeks in 1981 and a new seat cover installed in his car shortly after Adam went missing. However, a voice stress analysis indicated no deception, leading investigators to clear him. There was no autopsy report, and the child was identified solely by dental records, which were incomplete. Although the Walsh family accepted that Otis Tul was responsible, these remaining doubts complicate the case's legacy.
Killer was found, right?
It took me 27 years to get those files from the Hollywood Police Department. A new young chief came into being, and the Hollywood attorney, DA in Broward County, never wanted us to see those files.
On December 16, 2008, Hollywood Police Chief Chad Wagner announced, with John Walsh by his side, that the case was now closed. After an external review, the police concluded that Otis Tul was the murderer. Legislative efforts continued to evolve in the wake of Adam's tragic story. President Bush passed the Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act on July 25, 2006, and signed into law just days later. This landmark act established a national database for convicted child offenders, increased penalties for violent crimes against children, and implemented measures to combat human trafficking. In 2016, the Adam Walsh Reauthorization Act was introduced, which ensured that programs created under the 2006 Act received the necessary funding to carry on their vital work. This legislation was part of the Survivors' Bill of Rights, which reflected a steadfast commitment to child protection. While Adam Walsh's death is a heartbreaking part of American history, his story has driven significant change.